It's interesting in Luke chapter 4, we find how Jesus was in the synagogue in his hometown and he was preaching to them. And then he also delivered people who were demonized. But then the people in the town, they were surprised because there was such a drastic change in Jesus Christ. For 30 years, they knew him, they saw him, he was just a simple carpenter, and now suddenly he's preaching and teaching with authority, and then suddenly he's now driving out demons, healing the sick. So they couldn't really swallow that. They couldn't comprehend what was happening. And, he was getting the attention and respect from so many people. And probably there were some people who were jealous, the leaders in that town, the religious leaders, the political leaders, and so on. So they couldn't figure out what was happening. And they didn't really respect him. They took him for granted. And so, in response to that, Jesus said that a prophet is not accepted in his own hometown. He couldn't do many miracles there because they didn't really have faith in his ability to heal or in God's power in him that was allowing him to heal. So, it's interesting that he mentioned that a prophet is not accepted in his own hometown. We often see that happening even right now. When we know somebody from childhood and then suddenly they're being used by God in wonderful ways. We know of their past, we know of their history, we know of their playfulness, and now they're being used by God. We cannot really take them too seriously, and that's unfortunate uh, for us to respond that way to people who are being used by God, even though we have known them for a long time. So, this is an encouragement for us. If you know somebody for a long time and you have known them as somebody who have been struggling in their lives and not really keen on knowing God and not being used by God, and suddenly now they are being used in wonderful ways by God, we ought to accept them. We ought to respect them, give them our support, give them our encouragement, especially when they start ministering among the people who he grew up with. We ought to embrace that person. That's God's gift for that community. God has raised up a person from among us, so we ought to support them and encourage them. We often see this also. We take people not only from our community for granted, but also people among our race or within our country for granted. We tend to give higher respect to people from other tribes, other nations, who are of other races. So let's not do that. Let's understand that God works irrespective of what country they're from, of what races. God works in tremendous ways through many people of many countries. So we ought to respect and embrace them and encourage them. Thank you.